Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at the Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land,
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love to do without sacrificing what's important to them. I feel like there's way too many business owners that got into business because they wanted a certain lifestyle and they've allowed their business to just slowly come up and creep up and run their lives versus the opposite of figuring out what they want their life to look like. And then how do we make the business the conduit to making that happen? So I know I say this every episode when I have a guest that I'm really excited, but I do. I genuinely am excited about having Angela Barnes here today. Angela and I, it's really interesting. For those of you that have been listening, I'm grateful for you and thank you for being here. But Angela and I literally did not know each other until we got on the video today, about 2 minutes before we started to record. Well, 5 minutes maybe. And my chief community builder had said, you need to talk to Angela Barnes. You need to talk to her. You need to talk to her. So we scheduled her for this. And I know the universe, there is nothing random, right? Like the universe has put us together and there's so many cool things we're going to talk about in this episode. And I cannot wait, but I'm going to let Angela introduce herself. Tell us a little bit about how you show up in service to the world and who you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Debbie. I'm super excited. I spent some time Googling who is Debbie Heiser. And so I'm super honored to be here to have this conversation with you today. Yeah, I'm Angela Barnes and I reside in Liberty Lake, Washington, just not far from you. And I have a clinic named KVINNA Care here in Liberty Lake, and KVINNA means woman in Swedish. And so we are a clinic that specializes in helping women, especially with early detection for breast cancer. That's kind of my main role, I would say, vocationally in the world right now. But prior to KVINNA Care 3 years ago, I really spent the last 25 years of my life raising my children. I really was in full-time women's ministry. I did a lot of leading of women's groups and mentoring, and really devoted myself for the last 25 years to both my family and women and building women up. And so this journey into KVINNA Care has been a kind of an unlikely twist and turn right as I was empty nesting. I have 3 grown adult children and married to my wonderful husband, Mark, and really was dreaming about the next chapter of my life, had a lot of business plans written that did not include breast cancer.
Yeah.
More in the world of design and art, which is my background. And so yeah, this stepping into the medical industry was a very unlikely business prospect for myself, but it's been a really great journey so far.
Perfect. And Angela, tell us a little bit about what your clinic does. Like, what do you specialize in? Who comes to see you? What's that all about?
Yeah. We specialize in a technology called automated whole breast ultrasound, which is a mouthful, but essentially what that means is it's a robotic ultrasound machine. So most people, at least women in their life, have had some form of ultrasound. If you've done your prenatal ultrasounds where they squish the ultrasound gel. And so it's utilizing that same ultrasound technology, but it is in a robotic machine that takes up to 5,000 detailed images of women's breast tissue. And I kind of stumbled upon it. My best friend was diagnosed with a late stage breast cancer. And the whole thing was kind of a strange happening because she had just had her mammogram. Natalie was, I would say, one of the most diligent, proactive women I have ever known, really, that has, in terms of her health. You know, she was the person on the forefront of like knowing like about essential oils and like what you shouldn't be eating and organic. And I mean, she was, I mean, anytime I had a health question, I would call Natalie, like, what should I be taking or whatever. And so she had her yearly mammogram, just like many of us do. And she got a clean bill of health and didn't think much of it. She pitched the letter in the mail and went on with her life. And a few weeks later, she felt a lump. And it kind of was like, that's strange, because I just had a mammogram less than a month ago and they said I was fine. So she kind of dismissed it initially. A few months later, it hadn't dissipated on its own. And so she went ahead and let her doctor know, and they scheduled an ultrasound, and it did turn out to be a pretty large late stage cancer lesion that the mammogram had missed. And so I remember getting that phone call from her, and at the time I was, I think 47 or 48 years old. And I was, I myself had been getting mammograms, for years. And I was like, how does that happen? Like, what in the world? And she said, well, they told me it was because I have dense breast tissue. And I don't know if you're familiar with dense breast tissue. Prior to this phone call with Natalie, I had never heard the term dense breast tissue. So I had to Google it. And what it is, it's really nothing more than some women have more fibrous tissue in their breasts. Some of the breast tissue can be fattier tissue, and some of it can be more fibrous in nature. Well, the more fibrous in nature a breast is, the harder it is for mammograms to see those small cancers, because on a mammogram, it's X-ray technology. So just like a bone would show up white, the more white your breast appears in a mammogram. So the more dense it is, the more white it appears. Well, guess what also is white on a mammogram? Cancer. So, trying to see those small white spots in a breast that looks white on the mammogram becomes very challenging. And so for those women, you really need ultrasound to see those small lesions. It's the only way you can see them. I mean, short of an MRI, but a lot of women aren't going to get insurance to, approve an MRI as a yearly screening option. So that was my first, intro into this issue. And so I myself go dig out my mammogram, thing, and in little tiny fine print on the bottom of my mammogram report also said, you have dense breast tissue. You might talk to your doctor about supplemental imaging. I was like, well, what supplemental imaging? So this whole thing started, me on I'm a little bit of a person that I'm a dog with a bone. Like once I'm like trying to wrap my head around something, like, how does this happen? And the more research I did, the more angrier I got, to be honest with you, because it's not some very small percentage of women who have dense breast tissue. It's nearly 50% of women, larger in some other demographics. 90% of Asian women have dense breast tissue. Almost 60% of African-American women have dense breast tissue. So this isn't some little 5 or 10% of women land in this risk factor. It's a large percentage of women. And for those women, mammography can miss cancers up to 50% of the time. So for all the women who are doing what they think they should be doing, what they've been told is enough to get that early detection, and they throw their results letter in the mail or in the garbage, and they go to bed that night, and they have a false sense of security. And it just made me so angry that my friend was suffering this late stage diagnosis when it could have been caught had her doctor educated her, had she had access to ultrasound as a screening option. And so I went hunting and found this radiologist in Southern California who had developed this automated ultrasound machine specifically for breast tissue, because he in his 40-year practice had seen this happen so many times that he himself was like, there's got to be a better way to screen these women. And so in the middle of COVID, when no one was supposed to be going anywhere, the world was shut down, I snuck down to Southern California, don't tell anybody, and met with this radiologist. And came home so inspired that this man had seen a need and developed this technology. And then I just couldn't sleep at night. I was like, there's none of this technology in the entire inland Northwest. There's so many women I know that could use this. Like when you look in a room of like 8 women and you're like, okay, 4 of you have dense breast tissue. 4 of you, if you're only doing mammography, that you're running the risk of missing something. And so my husband, who loves me and signs up for all of my crazy ideas, I said, what if we buy a machine? what if we open a clinic and hire radiologists and hire techs? And, I don't know anything about building a clinic, but I was like determined to make sure that women in our community had easy access to this technology. And so there, KVINNA was born. Very, very unlikely.
Yeah. And Angela, thank you for doing that work because, the more and more I learn about health, and my sister is a nurse and educates all of the ER and also works for the fire department in Pasadena. And we were having this conversation even about menopause and how little research there is. And if I hear that my hormones are normal for the age that I am, I don't want what is normal? Like, who's determining what that normal is, right? So, in a way, I see you also advocating for women. You're talking about your friend, how Natalie was like on the cutting edge. Well, you've taken that torch, right? Like, you're on this cutting edge of helping people advocate for themselves and take on. And it's interesting because my mom, many of you that are listening know my mom passed away in 2005 of breast cancer. And so when I look back, some of the conversations that we had, she's like, when I win this battle, I'm going to open up a business and become an advocate, because you like all of the things even that you have to do to keep things organized and making sure that you're being billed correctly and all of these things, right? Like, there's just so much that we in the past have been trained to just listen to our doctors. And I'm not suggesting that doctors don't know what they're doing. That's not the point, but more of like, we just take it for what it is and don't question. Right. And I think it's so important, particularly as women, because just in the last 10 to 20 years, have we seen even female physicians come more into play, and doctors research what they're interested in.
Mhm.
So, if you don't have a lot, so hats off to that man too in Southern California, because if you don't have people that are going through menopause, that have gone through things with breast cancer, have dense, I mean, I can't tell you how many I've gotten back that have been nerve-wracking because of the dense breast tissue that I have, right? That I've had to go in and get ultrasounds or things done to make sure that everything's okay. And it's scary because there isn't a lot out there telling you where to go, what to do, and for people like me too, that are I try to be very proactive in my health and looking at longevity, that's important. And so thank you for doing the work that you do. And I want to touch on something, Angela, because you are referring to Natalie in a past tense. And so I'm assuming that she lost that battle.
She did
Um,
2 years
yeah,
ago. She
I'm so
unfortunately
sorry to hear
lost her
that.
battle. I know. I get still choked up thinking of it. And every day that I encounter challenging days with KVINNA, because there's been lots of challenging days where you're just like want to throw in the towel because it can be hard. It can be hard doing good things. And especially if you're challenging a standard and you're kind of like a salmon swimming upstream a little bit. And I always think of Natalie every time I want to give up. I think, no, there's another Natalie out there. Natalie was 56 years old. Her adult children were just starting to get married. She had 2 or 3 grandchildren at the time that she passed, and a couple more have been born since. And I just think, her life was cut short. Like, she should be here enjoying her grandbabies, and would have, had she understood and been educated enough on this and had easy access to this level of screening for her. She could have probably caught that cancer at stage 1 and had a much likely opportunity to survive that diagnosis. And so, yeah, I think of Natalie every single day. I think of her. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And it is interesting. I'm really grateful for a lot of the research that's been done, because I know, like, even with my mother, the things that she had going on, chances are, had that happened 10 years later, she was 59 when she died. And so it's like, had that happened 10, 15 years later, she probably would have had a much higher chance of survival, right? Like, and it's just a progression that happens. And so when you think about this and kind of that fire that keeps you going in this, like, when we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit too about, like, what is the hard, right? Because when you are on the cutting edge of things, there are roadblocks that you run into. And so I kind of want to talk about those. So we'll be right back, folks. And then we'll dig into that. Let's face it, sometimes as an entrepreneur and a business leader, we need some guidance, support, and community. So we here at The Lit Up Life have 3 ways that you can work with us in order to achieve that. As a private client, we work together to quantum leap your business by discovering strategies to help you move past what's holding you back and allow you to identify what you want your life to look like. The result? Your business becomes the conduit to the lifestyle, success, and impact that you intend. Now, I'm a huge believer in the power of collaboration. So in our community masterminds, you can join in with other high vibrational business owners who want to level up, increase impact, and financial gain, all with a tribe of other women to support and encourage you on your journey. Currently, we're accepting application for this women's mastermind group, which is a year-long program for women in business who are ready for that next level of success. We create deep personal awareness in a safe and supportive space where you can experience growth with others who are on that same path. Through weekly sessions with our program coaches, teachings that go beyond the buzzwords, and immersive retreats in places like Mexico, the Dominican Republic, or Belize, we work together to create long-term abundance and lasting impact in your life and business. The last and final way to get involved with us is our group coaching programs. They provide the opportunity for teaching, masterminding, and feeling like you aren't alone on this ride. Come join us. Okay, folks, we are back, and Angela Barnes is here, and we are talking about a clinic that she has in Liberty Lake, Washington. I also, we kind of left and are coming back to wanting to understand, I want to understand the hard, and then I also want to understand if someone lives in Florida or Massachusetts, like, is there some kind of network that people can get in touch with you or get in touch with someone that does what you do that's closer that they could go get that checked out if they want to? So we'll get into that. But let's talk a little bit about, you were talking about how Natalie and what she went through is kind of that driver for you when you want to stop, right? Like when you hit the speed bumps that seem really high, like it keeps you going. Tell us about some of the hard, because I know when you are on the leading edge of things and introducing something that's different than the quote unquote norm, that you can get some backlash and some things that happen. Tell us about some of the hard, because I think as women, we need to support each other and speak up more about things like this.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was industry specific. I think I challenged, like I said, I think by opening KVINNA, and a couple things, I made it direct refer where women didn't have to have permission to pick up the phone and make an appointment. I made it affordable. And so I basically any hoop that a woman would have to jump through to get easy access to supplemental breast screening, I just removed it. I just said, no, I'm gonna step out of all the rigmarole of that. And so that alone, and then the fact that I was allowing women to step around a traditional standard of care and get whatever screening they felt necessary for themselves, that was hard. And I was a little idealistic. I'm a very excited, happy, joyful person. So I'm like, we're all just about helping people, right? And so I think that was a very unexpected thing that that the powers that be in our area around this, were very put off by the fact that I had done that I didn't ask anybody permission to do it. I just did it. So that was hard for me because I'm someone who likes to be liked. And especially when you feel like you're trying to do good and you have a good will in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. And so I was really surprised. I'm like, I didn't know I accidentally kicked a hornet's nest in our medical community and didn't actually mean to. I kind of just thought, let's all lock arms. No one else is offering this service to women. So that was unexpected. So I had to get a very thick skin very quick. And that was something, I think I've been through some very challenging things in my life and really thought I had acquired all the thickness of skin. I mean, I've been through a divorce. Have had some very hard losses in my life and consider myself a pretty gritty person. But I will tell you that initially did rattle me, because I have a heart for collaboration. I have a heart to lock arms and change our communities for the better. I wasn't trying to go into competition with anybody. I was literally just trying to provide a service that no one else was providing. So that initially was really discombobulating. I'm not going to lie. It took me a minute to kind of get my bearings emotionally when op-eds were written about me and just some hard things.
Yeah.
But I think those are the moments where it's an invitation to grow and mature and get really clear on your why when you're getting on position. And so, it was hard. I'm not going to lie, there were some really emotional moments in that for me, because I felt misunderstood and maligned. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think of Natalie and I'm like, you know what? I'm very clear on my why and who it is I'm trying to serve. And it's not the medical community, it's the women in our community. And so I had to kind of shake that off. And then there were just a lot of things, like not just in my business, I think in business in general, there's just challenges in starting a new business. And there's a lot of things that are out of your control. And so I always say, hi, I'm Angela. I'm a recovering control freak. And so I had to get more comfortable when there were hiccups or things that would happen that were outside of my control, like staff turnover. And I mean, just the litany of things that happen in business, and getting more now when things happen and I get the random phone call of something's going wrong, or, now I just roll with it a lot more graciously. But initially in business, I mean, there were so many things outside of my control, and it would drive me bananas when unexpected things would happen that I felt like I couldn't manage the outcome of. So I'm growing. I mean, I always laugh because I'm like, I thought between marriage and kids, I had done most of my hard growing. And then I'm like, oh, try starting a business.
Yes.
That'll really grow
definitely
you up, because
yeah.
it's so not easy. And, and I have a business degree. My dream always was to own a business, and, chose some other paths earlier in my life. And so I was like, wow, like when you're reading all the business books, it's like you read the stories of hard. And then when you're in the stories of hard, it actually, the little cute anecdotes in the business books don't really do it justice of really how panicky those moments can feel when you're building. So
I had to reach over because one of the things that I teach a lot on is messaging, right? And how we can do hard things. And I have to remind myself two things: not to make it harder than it is, and that hard things can be just that easy, right? Like I have to mentally choose it. So I have an easy button from Staples, and it's my reminder. And I play it once in a while when those things start to happen, where I'm like, nope, I'm not going to succumb to feeling I don't do overwhelm, and I'm not going to succumb to thinking something's so hard that I can't get through it. It's either the message that I'm not supposed to go that way, or it's the message of this is a growth opportunity for you, right?
And I think I had always I didn't even, let's just say this, I didn't know it was an assumption of mine until KVINNA that hard would mean bad. I didn't even know that was an assumption in my mindset. And there were so many, I would say 90% of what I did the first 2 years of KVINNA was hard. And so the first 6 months, I had to get over that mindset of just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not what I should be doing, that it's bad, I kind of had to just lean into hard. Hard can just sometimes just mean hard. It doesn't mean it's like a don't go here, and so I had to kind of, like, to your point, get over this idea that hard is bad. And the reality that I don't know if you've read the book, Marie Forleo's book, Everything is Figure Outable.
No, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book. And I think I kind of like, okay, it is hard, but it's figure outable. Like there is a way through, we just need to figure it out. And you just have to kind of set the emotion aside and put your blinders on. And, and I think having enough maturity though to acknowledge that doing hard things does take a toll, and making sure that you're taking care of yourself in the process.
Absolutely.
I kind of had to up my self-care, and the reality, like when I'm in a battle that many hours a day for women, I need to make sure that I'm nurturing the other side of me that can take a breath and laugh and enjoy cooking a beautiful meal and a beautiful glass of wine. And I just had to learn to kind of balance being in the fight with some nurturing and self-care for myself, because I did get really good at just putting my head down, but to pretend it doesn't take a toll on us would be, not super wise. Then you get burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angela, I'm so glad, two things that you said about how hard isn't always bad. We do have these messages, right? That hard means it's bad, and hard isn't always bad. Hard can just be, like I love to speak in front of people, but I find that hard because I'm speaking more from the heart versus like being more like when I teach my classes at Gonzaga, more in my headspace. So but then the other thing too is that idea of making sure you are taking care of yourself. I stole from Rachel Hollis a long time ago. She uses this example of a vase and how we have this unending supply available to us. And when we pour out, which I hear a lot in my faith base, I'm like, no, 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 because you cut off the supply and then you become resentful because you become empty, and versus standing tall and knowing who you are and knowing how you do business, knowing those things and allowing that energy supply to come in, and then people get your overflow, right? And how we poke holes sometimes in the vase. And that poking of holes is about making sure, like, I know the more and more coaching I do, the more time I need. And I'm super extroverted. Like, I get energy from being at airports, and I get more done in the Delta Sky Lounge than I will in 2 days in my office by myself, right? Because that energy. But I also know that after I have given a lot of energy in, like I have a retreat coming up. Well, by the time people hear this, it'll be over in October. And I do a mastermind where I host a couple of retreats. And when I go through those intensives, like, I need a couple of days to recharge my energy and allow that vase to get filled back up. And when we don't take that time, that's when you start to get burnt out, you get resentful, like life is not lit up. It's not fun. And so, and it's not always about going and getting the massage. Sometimes for me, it's about going for a walk in nature or spending time with my grandson, and because he's laughing all the time, right? And so whatever that is for people, it could be painting, whatever that, you talked about design and creativity. And that creativity is so important because I find a lot of business women I work with, we can get pretty intense, right? Like, because we have a mission and we get really clear. And when you're clear, you go on that mission. And sometimes we can be like, even though we have the physiological capability of doing multiple things, it's like you used to call it a dog with a bone, right? Like, we can go that direction. And it's so important to surround ourselves with other, high vibrational business people, whether it be women or men, but in doing those things that inspire us, right? That fill our soul,
Yeah.
to be able to continue to do this work. So yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
being.
I've just this year, I think the first 2 years of building the business, I was just so head down in the operations, and finally had enough bandwidth to kind of lift my eyes up last year. And one of the realizations I had is I needed to build relationships with other like-minded female business owners for that reason. And going back to what you were saying about hard, that was one of the best things I could have done for myself, because then all of a sudden you're in a room full of people who are also experiencing hard, and then it normalizes the hard. Because I
Right.
think it's just you by yourself, you're like, what am I doing wrong? You start questioning yourself. I'm like a bad leader. If I was a good leader, this hard thing wouldn't be. And then you get in a room full of other leaders and you're like, no, this is just part of the gig. And hearing everyone else's stories is so normalizing and encouraging. And then you cheer each other on in those hard moments. And so I feel bad that I robbed myself of that community. The first 2 years, I was pretty isolated in getting this started. I had my team, my staff, but I was leading my staff. So you can't really whine about how hard something is to your staff. You have to like be the leader. And so that has been a game changer for me, just the camaraderie and the support of other business owners, and realizing that if you are trying to bring a valuable good or service into the world for the benefit of other people, it's not always smooth sailing. There's always going to be, unexpected hiccups, the economy, or, this, that, or the other. And So I'm glad you brought up the community of other people, because that's been a big, and I am a reverse of you. I'm about as introverted as they come, and I can tend to be a little bit of a lone ranger. So that it was both humbling and encouraging to just finally let someone else into my heart and share what I was experiencing, and allow other people to encourage me and lift me up. And so I always am the first person to encourage when I run across another female business owner. I'm like, okay, you got to get in community, because it is too hard to do by yourself.
Absolutely. And Angela, I'm going to put in a little plug here for something I have going on,
Yeah.
because I couldn't have paid you to set that up, because I have another women's mastermind kicking off in January. It's an intimate group of 8. I will go up to 10, but it's an intimate group of 8. We meet all year long and support each other, but we also ask each other tough questions, right? To get out of some of the messaging and the stories that we have. To allow us to continue to grow. And we do 2 retreats a year. So check that out on the Lit Up Life website, because we'd love to have you join. So thank you. I wanted to put a little plug in for that as we were talking.
Perfect.
So yeah, I know, right? Like I couldn't have set that up any better. So thank you. But Angela, before we finish out today, and thank you again for what you do. And as we go into this, I always ask these last 3 questions. So one of them is, what would be your favorite song? Or if we went out to a platform, what would be your most played song or
So
band?
I'm a
Yeah.
person of faith, so I listen to a lot of worship music,
Yeah.
and there's a song that right now I'm playing on repeat, and it's called "I've Witnessed It," and it just talks about God's faithfulness and all the ways that He shows up for us. And if I'm not listening to worship music, I'm an oldies girl, so my kids laugh that if you walk into my kitchen anytime after 5 o'clock at night, I mean, Frank Sinatra will be playing, or
Yeah.
Etta James, or that's my vibe. I'm definitely like was born in the wrong era.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
but I
That's
feel like
awesome.
those are my 2 veins. I'm either, in a
Yeah.
faith space, letting God renew me and fill me up, or I'm just chilling out with my glass of wine, listening to Frank Sinatra.
That's awesome. I know I've been listening to a lot more. I have been throwing up some Casting Crowns and Stephen Curtis Chapman. Those are my 2 kind of favorite.
Oh, I
And I
love
don't know, I'm going to digress here for 2 seconds, but for those of you listening that are faith-based, and even if you're not, there is a documentary, I want to say it's either on Prime or Netflix, about Casting Crowns.
that.
That I highly recommend, because to me it's really about clarity and knowing what your purpose is, and that becomes like your true north of making decisions in what you're doing in your business and what you're doing in your vocation. So I highly recommend it. I don't remember what it's called, but it's either out on Prime or Netflix, about Casting Crowns. And then the other question I have for you is, what would be a book that you say to people, hey, you should pick this up and read it?
Well, not to be cliche, but the Bible. No, I mean, that's like, but outside of the Bible, which is like my go-to for everything in life, there's a book that someone gave me. Oh my gosh, it's been 25 years ago now, when I was going through a very hard season in my life. I was going through a divorce and whatever, that's a whole story we don't need to get into. But someone gave me a book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud. I don't know if you've heard of this book or not, but I can't tell you how many copies of this book I've through the years. I mean, I probably should buy it in bulk order at this point, because it's so applicable. I mean, relationships are at the core of everything that we do in life. Family and business and community work, and healthy relationships are the gift of heaven, right? But when they're not functioning well, it is the most painful thing in the world. And that Boundaries book is some of the most practical and tactical relationship advice, and understanding how to be in relationship with difficult people, how to have healthy boundaries. So yeah, I've literally hand that book with a highlighter to like tons of people. I'm like, don't take this as an insult. Just take it as a gift. This will change your life with your mother-in-law. This will change your life with your teenage child that you are wanting to strangle right now. And no, it's life altering. And I circle back. I probably reread that book every 3 or 4 years just to refresh myself of the principles in it. And it's just so good.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, that's a great one. I highly recommend that one too. So, okay, Angela, if someone wants to reach out to you, they want to know like how they can find a provider in their own area, they want to learn more about what you do, where would you send them?
Please see our website is probably our best place to find out all things KVINNA Care, and it's KVINNAcare.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes because it's spelled kind of funny. It's KVINNA, or you can follow us on all the socials at KVINNA Care. Everything is KVINNA Care. And if you are in another community, I mean, please reach out to us. We have a contact page on our website. And if you're in another part of the country where you're trying to hunt down the Sonosine technology, we can point you in the closest area that we might know. GE recently started developing and marketing a similar machine. And that some of the bigger hospital institutions are starting to lean into the GE technology. And so that's another place someone could also look.
Perfect. Perfect. Angela, thank you again for being a guest today and digging into the subject about women's health and us needing to be our own advocates, and that there are alternative ways out there than what the quote unquote normal course of action would be. So thank you so much for what you do and for spending this time with us.
Well, thank you, Debbie. It was an honor. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, folks, it's a wrap. We'll see you next week. Everybody make it a great one. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.